Hey, what is up YouTube? So today I'm going to start some very basic C++ programming tutorials. As you can see, I'm in VS Code. I recommend downloading that because it's super simple and easy to use and set up. Additionally to VS Code, you're also going to need minGW to install GCC and G++ and GDB, which G++ is what we're going to use to compile our application, and GDB is what we'll use to debug our application. And I will link down in the description a tutorial to install that using mysys, which is like the easiest way that I found to install those. So to begin with, I will show you the basic main function of a C++ application, which all C++ applications need a main to actually execute. You can also build libraries, but we're just going to focus on the very basics to begin with. So a C++ function is int main, and you can also pass in arguments into this main function. So you'd have argc and a char pointer to argv, which is a list of arguments. Also in the main function, I typically like to return 0, saying like the application executed successfully. If you want the application to execute as a crashed application, or like say you had a statement which produces an error and you want to return a crash report, you'd essentially do -1, which is saying like, hey, this application has improperly exited, an error has occurred. You could log that error, do whatever you wanted. But for this, we're going to return 0. And now, so this is our basic setup for the application. We can go ahead and compile this application. It's not going to do anything, but we can compile it. So we use G++ and then type in our application. And that's going to compile it right here. You see we have a.exe, so say we run a.exe, it's not going to do anything. We don't have anything in here yet. So to start, let's include a library. So to include libraries, you're going to use the include keyword. This is a built-in keyword to C++. And then we're going to include iostream. So iostream is part of the standard library, which includes many different things, but for this we're going to use the standard library out. So to use the out, which essentially will print to our console right here, we want to use std : cout, and then you want to use these less than signs. So you're essentially saying write this stream to the cout function, and then you want to type whatever you want to cout. So we'll do the standard hello world, and then typically I like to end everything with a new line. So the \n is a new line character, and then semicolon. So this std right here is a namespace, which we will get into later. So that's essentially saying within this namespace, let's use this function cout, and let's write this stream of hello world in a new line. So if we compile this application again, and then we run it, you can now see it prints out hello world. So that's like the very basic setup for C++ application. So now we can get into a little more of the weeds of the application. So now to get in the weeds of our application, let's utilize the main application arguments. So to start, we're going to make an if statement. And so if statement is if, and then open and close parenthesis, and then 2 brackets. So anything within inside these parentheses is the condition that is going to be checked. So all lists, which are represented by these brackets, start from the index 0 and then increment up from there. So we are going to check if the first argument, or essentially the second argument in the list, is equal to, and we are going to actually import strings in here. So this is another library built into C++ called string. So we're going to check if it's equal to std string, and we're going to check a. So we're essentially going to check, hey, is this a? We could also assign this to a variable. I'll show you that as well. Oops. So as you see, when you create a variable, you specify the type of the variable. So this is a string variable, the name of the variable, then 1 equal sign to whatever the variable is set. When you're comparing variables, you use equals equals. And the reason we didn't just do a right here is because this is a list of pointer objects, and this is a character, and so this wouldn't ever be true. You could technically dereference this and do it that way, but that is not the proper way. You'd also have to use single quotes instead of double quotes, specify it's a character. That's not the proper way to do it. You can also use a built-in function called string compare to compare those. That's kind of the C way to do it, but in C++ we're just going to use this std string because we'll use this later in the future. So essentially you want to check, hey, is our argument A? If so, let's execute our hello world. So now our hello world is within inside these brackets, and so this is the condition that will be checked, or that will be executed. So now if we recompile our application, and then we execute our application, if we don't pass in anything, nothing will happen. If we now pass in the letter A, we will get our hello world. So now that we kind of know how to utilize these arguments and create an if statement, let's get a little more in depth. So there are different types in C++. You'll see int, you'll see double or longs as well. These all represent numbers. You have the std string, which is a built-in list of strings that you can do other operations on, like append, erase, remove. There's a lot more you can do with that instead of just a list of characters like this argv. So let's start with a simple equation. So let's have int x equals 2, int y equals 3, and let's utilize our if statement, but also we'll use an else statement. So else is essentially saying if that condition we want to test doesn't execute, then execute the else. So we'll do if, and then we want to do x plus y. So built into C++ we have plus, we also have multiplication, and I believe you can do exponent by doing double multiplication. Actually that's not true. There's a built-in library for math where you can do pow and then you can do exponents. But let's do x plus y, and we want to say if that is equal to 5, then we want to do std cout correct, and let's add the new line. And so now if we build our application, we should get the correct as the output. So if we do .exe, correct. So if we change this to 5, so 2 plus 5 is 7. So if we build and then execute again, nothing should happen, right? So that's where our else statement comes in. So if we have our else, then we could say that if it's not 5, then we want to print out incorrect. So now if we build our application once more, little typo. Build our application once more and then execute it, we now get incorrect because it's equal to 7. So in addition to if and else, we can do else if. And so essentially we now have these 3 statements, which these can get very messy if you have a lot of these. So it's best to organize your if statements correctly. But now we can do if x plus y is equal to 7, and we can print out also correct. So now if we execute this application, we'll get also correct. So we have if, else if, and else. And again, if we change this to like 9 and build, we should get that incorrect statement right here, as you can see right there. So that's kind of how if and else if statements work. So the next big thing is loops. So let's say let's say we have a string which is a name. So I'm going to do my name, Josh. And let's say we want to get each character of that string. We just want to print out each of the characters within the string. We can use what's called a for loop. So to write a for loop, you have for, open and close parentheses and brackets, similar to the if. But in this condition statement, it's a little different than the if statement. So the first thing you'd put in here would be your starting indice. So we'll do int I equals 0. So we're saying, hey, this variable I is equal to 0. And then you could also technically have this on the outside and leave this blank, but that would be more like a while loop, which I'll show you here in a second. And then we want to say I is less than name dot length. So this is the length of that string. So this would be 4. And then we want to do plus plus I. So essentially what this is saying is, oops, let's do a semicolon there. So essentially what this is saying is the I variable is 0, so it starts at 0. And as long as I is less than the length of our name, we want to increment I. And so now we can go in here, we can see out, and a cool thing, since this is a list of strings, we can actually access the string, similar to how we did with the argv. So we could go in here, and we could go name I. And so essentially what that's going to do is it's going to print out the character within the string name at I index. So if we go ahead and execute this after recompiling, you can see it prints out each character, J-O-S-H. And so now the for loop version, or the while loop version of this would be, we would have our int I on the outside, and then we'd have while. And the condition like this is more like the if statement, but essentially you want to check a bounds or check if something's not equal to something. That way it breaks out of the loop, otherwise this loop would run forever. So if we say I is less than name.length, and then we want to std cout name I, or you can also do dot at I. It's a built-in method. I'll show you case that. So that's built into the string of the standard library. It's the same thing as using the square brackets like we did in this one. And then you have to do I plus plus. So this is just going to increment I. We could also do the plus plus I again. Let's do that just to keep it the same. So essentially what this is going to do, it's going to say while I is less than the length, print out that, and then increment I. And that will go all the way until this condition is met. So if we compile and execute, you can see it does the exact same thing. So say we didn't have this plus plus I, we forgot it. This is where while loops can get a little iffy. So if we compile this and execute it, you can see it will just continually execute and never increments to the next letter. It'll just always stay at 0 where it started and print out the first letter. And this will literally run forever. So let's do Control C to stop that. So plus plus I. That'll stop that from looping forever. So yeah, that is kind of part 1 of the series. We just got into the very basics. Next episode, we'll get into namespaces, methods, and also header files. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want to see something in particular. I don't know if you guys want to learn sockets, networking, pointers, anything like that. The pointers will come in the 3rd episode. So yeah, just let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you.